The story begins in a dark forest filled with strange monsters. Kim Woo-jin, a man with messy black hair and tired eyes, is pinned to the ground by a multi-eyed monster. The creature holds his shoulders down while drool falls from its mouth. Woo-jin struggles as the monster opens its jaws, showing rows of sharp teeth. Blood splatters as the attack continues. Woo-jin remembers the rule he has learned. If he dies here, he will wake up again. He suddenly wakes up in his bed, gasping for air and covered in sweat. He is back in his room. This has been happening for 12 years. Woo-jin looks exhausted with dark circles under his eyes and unshaven stubble. He touches his neck, still feeling the pain from the dream. Every night feels like a real death. Outside, the city is normal and busy. The peaceful environment is completely different from the forest he sees in his sleep. During the day, Woo-jin studies the monsters he fights at night. His room is filled with notebooks containing monster drawings, anatomy notes, and weaknesses. His apartment is packed with training equipment like weights and boxing bags. Everything he does during the day is preparation for the nightmare world. Even though he is extremely tired, he is afraid to sleep. Whenever he closes his eyes, he returns to that forest. He remembers many of the ways he died there, including being torn apart by a wolf-like beast and being pierced by a blade. The rule never changes. If he dies in a dream, he wakes up in reality. The repeated deaths slowly wear down his mind. Sitting on his bed, Woo-jin coughs and holds his chest. Every time he rests, another battle begins. For 12 years, he has lived between two worlds. During that time, he trained constantly in the Nightmare Forest. He learned weapons, martial arts, and survival skills. In that world, he became sharp, focused, and deadly. He moves carefully and cuts down monsters with precise strikes. With enough training, he began dying less often. However, nothing changes in reality. Back in his room, Woo-jin holds his head in frustration. No matter how strong he becomes there, he always wakes up in the same weak body. At one point, he visits a psychiatrist. After listening to him, she suggests that he find a hobby or something he wants to do. Later, Woo-jin repeats her words to himself. Standing in his room and looking at the board filled with monster research, he realizes something. He is no longer afraid of the nightmare world. He simply wants to fall asleep and never wake up again. Kim Woo-jin looks completely drained. His messy hair and stubble show the toll of 12 years without proper rest. He only wants to sleep peacefully for one night. Suddenly, blood drips from his nose. A moment later, blood pours from his mouth and stains his hands. Woo-jin clutches his chest in shock as his body finally collapses under years of strain. His vision begins to blur and he loses consciousness. The headache that followed him for 12 years slowly fades away. With a heavy thud, he collapses onto the floor and lies face down in a pool of blood. His body remains motionless. His life in the real world has ended. In the darkness, Woo-jin feels something strange. His body feels light, and the pain that had been constant for years is gone. When he opens his eyes, he sees a blue sky above him. Fresh air fills his lungs. For the first time in many years, his body feels rested. He slowly sits up and sees large trees surrounding him. He quickly realizes where he is. He has returned to the nightmare world. Woo-jin leans against the roots of a large tree. He is wearing his hunter gear, and his body looks younger and healthier than before. For 12 years, he suffered in this place. But waking up here, while feeling this well, is new. Suddenly, he senses something nearby. His instincts warn him that he is being watched. A reptile demon beast appears behind a tree. Its long tongue moves as it observes him. The creature is muscular and fast, clearly treating him as prey. Woo-jin stays quiet behind a tree root and watches it carefully. He remembers the blood he lost in his apartment and understands what happened. He really died in the real world. This forest is now his only world. Woo-jin lowers his body and pulls up his hood to hide himself. If this place is his new reality, he must survive using everything he learned over the past 12 years. He slowly stands up. If he dies now, there will be no waking up again. This time death will be permanent. His expression becomes calm and focused. From now on, he will treat this place as his real world. The reptile demon beast prepares to attack, unaware that Woo-jin already understands how it hunts. Woo-jin studies the situation and decides not to fight immediately. He plans to lure the monster into a place where it will lose its advantage. After years of training, his instincts return. He pulls out his dagger and prepares to move. Then Woo-jin lunges forward, swinging his blade toward the reptile beast and beginning the hunt. Kim Woo-jin stands his ground and notices that his body feels light and energetic. He wonders if it is because he finally slept properly or because this younger body is different from the weak one he had before. The reptile demon beast suddenly lunges at him with great speed. Its claws dig into the ground as it snaps its jaws. The creature is large and powerful, but Wu Jin does not move back. The monster roars and rushes forward. Wu Jin grips his sword tightly. His focus sharpens, and the hesitation he once had disappears. After 12 years of constant fighting, his instincts take over. He swings his blade in a precise strike and cuts through the monster's thick hide. Blood sprays as the blade slices through the creature's neck. The reptile demon beast collapses onto the ground. Wu Jin stands over the fallen body. His clothes are covered in blood, but he remains calm and focused. In the distance, tall pillars of light rise into the sky, showing that there is more to this world beyond the forest. Wu Jin kneels beside the corpse and cuts open the monster's chest. He searches inside and finds a glowing blue core. The core pulses with energy. He holds it in his hand and studies it carefully, understanding that it is important for survival in this world. The power inside the core confirms what he already suspected. Hunting monsters will make him stronger. After a moment, he leaves the carcass behind and walks deeper into the forest. He no longer thinks about the world he left behind. His only goal now is survival. He moves quietly through the forest, heading toward a brighter area where he hopes to find a safer place. Wu Jin does not realize that someone is watching him. A blonde hunter named Han Shan stands hidden behind a tree, observing him from a distance. Shan has been surviving in this world for some time and is studying the newcomer carefully. The forest remains quiet, but the danger of hidden monsters is always present. Wu Jin closes his eyes for a brief moment to rest. After a full night of sleep, he wakes up feeling refreshed. It is the first proper rest he has had in years. He slowly gets used to living in this harsh world as a lone survivor. The forest appears quiet, but Kim Wu Jin does not lower his guard. It has been a month since he arrived in this world. He moves through the forest carefully, searching for food. Even though he can fight, he avoids unnecessary battles. Fighting without a reason is dangerous here. From the shadows, he watches a bat-like monster feeding on another creature. He waits patiently beside a tree, studying the right moment to attack. He only hunts when he needs food, and the monster looks like a suitable meal. When the opportunity comes, Wu Jin moves quickly. His blade cuts through the air and strikes the creature before it can react. The monster collapses immediately. A glowing blue core appears inside its body. Wu Jin already knows what it is. These cores are the source of strength in this world. He removes the core and consumes it. Energy spreads through his body as the power settles into his muscles. Since he began consuming these cores, surviving in this environment has become easier. After resting for a moment, he checks the belongings of the body he now inhabits. Inside a leather pouch, he finds a bronze token. The writing on it is unfamiliar, but he can read it. The token shows that the body belonged to a third-class mercenary. This small discovery reveals something important. This world is not only filled with monsters. There are also people, organizations, and settlements. While thinking about this, Wu Jin notices something unusual on the ground. He quickly steps back and realizes he almost triggered a trap. Hidden under the dirt is a large bear trap connected to a chain. It was clearly placed by a human. That means someone else is hunting in this forest. Wu Jin becomes more alert and begins searching the area carefully. Soon he notices a building in the distance. He moves toward it. At the edge of the forest, he sees a small house standing alone among the trees. The cabin looks well-maintained. Wu Jin approaches and knocks on the door, but no one answers. After waiting briefly, he pushes the door open and steps inside. The cabin is quiet but filled with supplies. On a wooden table sits a leather-bound book. Wu Jin walks closer and looks at it carefully. Something about the book immediately catches his attention. Wu Jin picks up the book and reads the title. It is called Demonic Realm Chronicles. The name immediately catches his attention. As he holds the book, he suddenly senses someone behind him. He stops moving and realizes he is not alone in the cabin. He opens the book and flips through the pages. Inside are detailed records about the world, including its history and creatures. Wu Jin quickly understands that the information in this book could help him survive. He grips the book tightly, knowing he needs it. Just as he prepares to leave, a floorboard above him cracks. Someone drops down from the ceiling and points a crossbow at him. An old man stands in front of him with the weapon aimed directly at his head. The man demands to know who he is and warns him not to move. Wu Jin is relieved to see another person, but the situation is tense. He keeps his hands visible and calmly explains that he entered the cabin out of curiosity. The old man does not accept the explanation and orders him to leave immediately. Woojin slowly steps back, pretending to comply, but his attention remains on the book. He knows he cannot survive without the knowledge inside it. He asks if he can borrow the book and even offers to pay for it. The old man refuses and asks what Woojin will do if he does not agree. Woojin realizes he may need to force the situation. His hand moves toward the weapon at his waist. He draws his blade. The old man immediately raises the crossbow in response. Both of them stand still, watching each other closely. The small cabin becomes silent as they wait to see who will move first. After a moment, the old man lowers his weapon. He says that a real robber would not argue about books. He introduces himself as Hector. Woojin quickly gives a false name and introduces himself as Kim Woojin. He asks Hector to call him Jean. Hector finds the name unusual but does not question it. Woojin worries that his lie might be obvious, but Hector does not press the matter. Hector explains that the book is important to him and cannot be taken away. However, he allows Woojin to stay in the cabin and read it there. In return, Woojin agrees to help with simple chores. Night falls outside the cabin. Inside, a pot of vegetable soup cooks over the fire as Woojin begins staying in Hector's small house in the forest. Hector may seem rough and blunt, but he is not a bad person. He tells Woojin to eat and regain his strength. For the first time in a long time, Woojin eats a warm home-cooked meal. The simple soup comforts him, and he quietly enjoys it. The next morning, Hector prepares his gear and says he is heading into the forest. He explains that he is hunting a monster that killed his former comrades. Before leaving, he warns Woojin that the hunt may take a long time. Woojin watches him leave the cabin with a crossbow on his shoulder. Hector appears strong, but his serious expression shows that the monster he is chasing is dangerous. After Hector leaves, Woojin picks up the Demonic Realm Chronicles and begins reading. The book describes the fall of the Northern Empire. According to the records, the emperor opened a mysterious gate in search of power. When the seal was broken, a red pillar of light appeared in the sky. Creatures from another realm began pouring out. Within 9 years, the northern lands were overrun by monsters and became known as the Demonic Realm. Humanity later formed the Order Alliance and built a massive barrier to stop the spread of the creatures. Woojin finishes reading and thinks about what he learned. The book also explains that monsters grow stronger the deeper one travels into the realm. The information helps him understand the world he now lives in. Meanwhile, Hector is running through the forest while being chased by monsters. He moves quickly through the trees, trying to escape. Behind him, a pack of wolf-like beasts appears. Their bodies are twisted and their eyes glow red. Hector realizes he cannot outrun them. The lead wolf suddenly attacks. Hector barely avoids the strike and slides across the ground. He quickly raises his crossbow and fires 3 arrows in succession. The arrows fly toward the wolves, but the creatures react immediately. Instead of dodging, they catch the arrows with their claws and stop the attack. The wolves surround Hector from all sides, cutting off every escape. His arrows fail to stop them, and he realizes the situation is getting worse. Age is starting to slow him down. While preparing for the next attack, Hector notices a figure approaching from the direction of his cabin. He is surprised to see Woojin standing there. Woojin steps forward and draws his large blade. Hector immediately shouts for him to run, knowing how dangerous the wolves are. But Woojin does not retreat. Instead, he leaps forward with great speed and lands in the middle of the pack. His expression becomes cold as he moves directly into the fight. One of the wolves rushes toward him. Woojin swings his blade downward and cuts the creature in half. The wolf collapses instantly. The remaining wolves hesitate after seeing one of their own fall so quickly. Hector watches in shock as Woojin stands calmly in the middle of the clearing. For a moment, the clearing becomes quiet. Woojin stands still while blood drips from his blade. He asks Hector whether the monster he killed was considered strong. Hector looks at him in disbelief. The creature Woojin killed is known to be extremely dangerous, and most hunters cannot defeat one alone. Woojin listens but remains calm. He turns his attention toward the forest where the rest of the pack is gathering. More wolves appear from the trees. There are dozens of them. Woojin estimates there are around 40. Even so, he does not appear worried. Instead of charging in blindly, he studies the pack and searches for their leader. He knows that if the second in command is eliminated, the pack's morale will collapse. After observing them carefully, he identifies the target. A large red wolf stands at the front of the group. Its presence keeps the other wolves from retreating. Woojin watches it closely, planning to eliminate it first. As the pack prepares to attack, the red wolf suddenly lowers its head. A moment later, it turns around and runs. The rest of the wolves freeze for a moment. When their leader flees, their confidence disappears. One by one, they begin retreating as well. Soon the entire pack runs back into the forest. The fight ends without another strike. Wu Jin stands in the clearing and watches them leave. He makes no attempt to chase them. Hector observes everything from a distance, unable to believe what just happened. The wolves that had surrounded him moments ago fled without fighting. He realizes Wu Jin forced the pack to break by targeting their morale rather than fighting them directly. After the wolves disappear, the forest becomes quiet again. Later, the two return to Hector's cabin. Hector lays out the hide from the werewolf they killed earlier and explains that it is worth 40 gold coins. Wu Jin is unfamiliar with the currency and asks if that amount is significant. Hector explains that 40 gold coins is enough for someone to live comfortably for several years. Wu Jin looks at the hide again. To him, the monster was not particularly difficult to defeat, so he is surprised by its value. He begins to realize that hunting monsters could be a reliable way to earn money in this world. Hector then prepares supplies for him. He gives Wu Jin some jerky, silver coins, and a map that shows the route to Pioneer Village. He also tells him to visit a man named Jacob in the village. Jacob is known to buy monster materials. Wu Jin hesitates to accept the items, but Hector insists. The hide, he says, is payment for killing the monster that had taken the lives of his former comrades. After explaining this, Hector thanks Wu Jin for helping him settle that old score. He expresses his appreciation and hopes they may meet again in the future. Wu Jin and Hector shake hands, ending their short partnership. Wu Jin thanks him for the help and prepares to leave with the map and supplies Hector gave him. He bows once before leaving the cabin and follows the path on the map into the forest. Hector watches him disappear among the trees. While Wu Jin walks through the forest, a pair of eyes watches him from a distance. The red wolf from earlier, Mutt, stands on a rock and silently follows his movements. The wolf does not attack and simply keeps observing him. After some time, Wu Jin reaches the outskirts of Pioneer Village. The settlement is surrounded by large wooden walls built to keep monsters out. At the gate, armed guards stop him and question him before allowing him inside. Wu Jin walks through the muddy streets and notices that the town is full of armed mercenaries and rough-looking people. The atmosphere feels tense, and everyone watches strangers carefully. He remains cautious. In a place like this, people can be just as dangerous as monsters. Following Hector's directions, he finds a tavern where he is supposed to meet Jacob. Inside, the place is loud and crowded. Wu Jin walks through the room and goes directly to the bar. He places his pack on the counter and asks the bartender about Jacob. The bartender glances toward a man sitting nearby. The man approaches and introduces himself as Jacob. Wu Jin tells him that Hector sent him and mentions the werewolf hide. Jacob quickly becomes interested and begins examining the hide carefully. His reaction shows how valuable the item is. Wu Jin does not correct Jacob when he assumes Hector killed the monster. He simply waits for the payment. Wu Jin waits for his payment while Jacob examines the werewolf hide. The man is clearly impressed by its quality and keeps praising Hector, believing the old hunter was the one who killed the beast. In Jacob's mind, there is no way someone like Wu Jin could have hunted such a monster. As he studies the hide, Jacob begins planning to keep it without paying. Soon several large thugs step out from around the tavern and surround Wu Jin. It becomes clear that the situation was planned from the start. Jacob throws the hide over his shoulder and tells Wu Jin to leave if he values his life. He claims the hide is simply repayment for money Hector supposedly owed him. Wu Jin immediately understands that Jacob never intended to pay. For a moment, he considers killing him on the spot, but restrains himself. Jacob then throws beer in Wu Jin's face and tells him to leave. Wu Jin remains silent while the tavern grows quiet. The thugs move closer and draw their weapons. Instead of responding, Wu Jin calmly stands up and walks toward the door. Jacob laughs, believing the threat worked. However, just before reaching the exit, Wu Jin suddenly lifts a large cabinet and slams it against the door, blocking the way out. The loud crash echoes through the tavern. Wu Jin turns slightly and calmly tells Jacob that if he planned to rob someone, he should have done it properly instead of trying a cheap trick. Jacob becomes angry and orders his men to attack. The thugs rush forward together, swinging their weapons. One of them charges first. Wu Jin watches him approach without moving. Then, in a quick motion, he draws his blade. Wu Jin decides not to hold back. When the first thug attacks, Wu Jin easily parries the strike. The clash of weapons echoes in the room. The thug freezes in shock after realizing how fast Wu Jin reacted. Before he can respond, Wu Jin strikes back and cuts him down. Another thug swings a heavy axe toward Wu Jin's head. The axe crashes into the floor, but Wu Jin has already moved. He appears behind the attackers and prepares for the next move. There are too many enemies to fight slowly. Wu Jin decides to break their momentum. He grabs a heavy table and throws it forward. The table crashes into one of the attackers and knocks him down. Before the man can recover, Wu Jin strikes again and finishes him. The fight continues as Wu Jin moves quickly between the attackers. His blade cuts through the thugs one after another. The tavern soon becomes a wreck as the fight spreads across the room. Jacob watches the scene in panic as his men fall one after another. Wu Jin's movements are controlled and efficient after years of fighting monsters. Another thug attacks, but Wu Jin easily avoids the strike and counters with a powerful blow. The attacker collapses. Within moments, most of the thugs are already down. Wu Jin stands calmly among the fallen bodies. His clothes are stained with blood, but his expression remains unchanged. Seeing this, Jacob finally panics and orders the remaining men to run. The survivors rush toward the exit, abandoning the hide and escaping through the doors and windows. The tavern becomes quiet again. Outside, Jacob collapses on the ground while trying to catch his breath. He believes he has escaped. Then he looks up and sees something approaching. A massive red wolf has entered the village. The creature snarls as people begin to panic and run away. The wolf slowly walks toward Jacob. At the same time, Wu Jin steps out of the tavern and notices the animal. He recognizes the red fur and realizes it is the same wolf from the forest. Wu Jin immediately recognizes the red wolf. It is the same scout wolf from the forest that had been watching him earlier. The beast followed him all the way to the village. Seeing it again, Wu Jin prepares for another fight. He watches the wolf carefully, expecting it to attack. However, something unexpected happens. Instead of attacking, the wolf suddenly drops onto its back and begins wagging its tail. It whimpers and rolls on the ground, showing complete submission. Everyone nearby is confused, including the remaining thugs. The monster that had terrified people in the forest is now acting like a tame animal. Wu Jin watches silently while the wolf continues wagging its tail and looking up at him. After a moment, he begins to understand what might be happening. To test this idea, Wu Jin points toward the remaining thugs. The wolf immediately stops playing. Its posture changes and its eyes focus on the targets. Without hesitation, the beast rushes forward. The thugs have no chance to react. The wolf attacks them with overwhelming speed and strength. Within moments, the attackers are defeated. Blood stains the ground as the wolf finishes the last of them. Jacob is left alone. He looks up in terror as the massive wolf stands over him. Wu Jin calmly watches the scene while the wolf removes the final threat. Realizing he is the last one left, Jacob falls to the ground and begs for mercy. However, his thoughts reveal that he only plans to survive long enough to seek revenge later. Before he can say anything more, Wu Jin steps closer. He drives his sword into the ground directly in front of Jacob's face, stopping him in place. Wu Jin grips his weapon and looks down at Jacob with clear disgust. He can see through the man's begging immediately. The situation reminds him of people from his past life. For a moment, he remembers his old life in Korea. He once sat across from his factory manager, apologizing for things that were not even his fault. When he asked about his unpaid salary, the manager ignored his concerns and talked about the company's difficult situation. At that time, Wu Jin believed that working hard and being patient would eventually solve the problem. Weeks passed, then months, and he still did not receive his pay. One day, he returned to the office to ask again. Instead of addressing the issue, the manager was practicing golf in the office and treated Wu Jin with annoyance. The man accused him of being selfish for demanding his own wages and expected him to continue working quietly. Remembering this, Wu Jin realizes how often he allowed people to take advantage of him. Back in the present, he looks at Jacob and decides he will not repeat the same mistake. He turns away from the man. Seeing an opportunity, Jacob suddenly pulls out a hidden dagger and rushes toward Wu Jin from behind. However, Wu Jin already expects this move. He quickly avoids the attack and stops Jacob before the blade can reach him. Looking directly at him, Wu Jin understands that the man was pretending to beg only to attack at the first chance. Without hesitation, Wu Jin strikes. Jacob collapses, and the threat is finally over. Wu Jin stands quietly for a moment and makes a decision. He will no longer allow anyone to treat him like a helpless person. After the fight ends, the red wolf approaches again. The animal carries a small bag in its mouth and drops it at Wu Jin's feet. Inside the bag are several gold coins. The wolf appears to be offering them to him. Wu Jin looks at the bag of gold the wolf brought him. He did not expect a demonic beast to behave like this. It seems the wolf is offering a tribute. He asks the wolf if it wants to follow him. The wolf reacts immediately and moves closer to him, acting friendly instead of hostile. Seeing this, Wu Jin accepts the gesture and pats the animal. From that moment, the wolf becomes his companion. He decides to call it Mutt. After the events in the village, time passes and a new day begins. Wu Jin wakes up in a real bed. Mutt is lying nearby on the floor. It is the first proper rest he has had since arriving in this world. Later, he washes his clothes and body by a nearby stream. His body is covered in scars from years of fighting monsters. While cleaning the blood from his clothes, Wu Jin thinks about what happened earlier. The men he killed in the tavern were humans, yet he feels no guilt. To him, they were no different from the monsters he fought before. Looking at his reflection in the water, he realizes that he has changed. The long years of survival have made him colder and more practical. However, he decides that surviving in this world matters more than worrying about those changes. After preparing himself, Wu Jin continues his journey with Mutt. Soon the large walls of the 5th Pioneer City appear in the distance. Before entering the city, he tells Mutt to stay hidden nearby. Bringing a demonic beast inside would cause problems. Wu Jin enters the city alone and walks through the busy streets. From the information he read in the chronicles, he knows that monster bounties are handled by the Order Alliance. Following that information, he heads toward their headquarters and arrives at a large building with tall towers and white domes. The Order Alliance is the place where hunters exchange monster trophies for money. Inside the building, a clerk sits at the counter, bored and half asleep. His quiet day changes when Wu Jin walks in carrying a large bundle. Wu Jin places the heavy werewolf pelt on the counter. The weight makes the wooden desk creak. The clerk lazily asks what he wants. At first, he barely looks at the hide and dismisses it as ordinary animal fur. However, when he examines it more closely, his reaction changes immediately. He quickly realizes that it is a genuine werewolf pelt. Shocked, he confirms the quality of the hide and asks Wu Jin if he hunted the monster himself. Wu Jin calmly confirms and explains that he came to collect the bounty. After verifying the item, the clerk leads him to a private room to wait. Later, another official enters the room carrying a heavy pouch. He explains that confirming such a valuable trophy takes time. The pouch is placed on the table. Inside are many gold coins, the reward for the werewolf bounty. Wu Jin looks at the coins and realizes that the amount is enough to live comfortably for several years. As he looks at the gold in his hand, he understands how valuable money is in this world. While he is still examining the reward, the official speaks again. He asks if Wu Jin would be willing to accept another request. A dangerous monster has appeared at a nearby quarry. Because of it, the workers are too afraid to enter the mine. Without workers, the quarry cannot produce bloodstone, which affects the city's economy. The official explains that the creature is believed to be stronger than the werewolf Wu Jin hunted earlier. Even so, he believes Wu Jin might be capable of dealing with it. Wu Jin listens calmly and asks for more information about the monster before making a decision. The official reveals that the monster is called the Mad Skull. The Alliance has placed a bounty of 70 gold coins on it. When Wu Jin hears the name, he immediately recognizes it. He remembers reading about the creature in the survival chronicles. He had also faced one during his 12 years in the Nightmare World. The Mad Skull is known for its extremely hard skull that acts like natural armor. Its bone-like mask is difficult to break with normal weapons. The monster is also highly aggressive and far stronger than a werewolf. Wu Jin recalls that the first time he fought one, it took him an entire month to defeat it, and he died many times during that struggle. The official asks if Wu Jin believes he can handle such a dangerous monster. Wu Jin stays silent for a moment while considering the reward and the risk. After thinking about it, he accepts the request. Later, Wu Jin arrives at the quarry where the Mad Skull has been appearing. The mining site is quiet because the workers have stopped coming due to the monster. Wu Jin moves through the rocky area while recalling what he knows about the creature. While he searches the quarry, someone calls out to him from nearby. A large man steps out and introduces himself as Jonathan, the captain of the Black Marlin mercenaries. He explains that his team arrived first and asks Wu Jin to wait. Wu Jin is not impressed by the idea of waiting in line to hunt a monster. After surviving in the Nightmare World for years, he follows the rule of first come, first kill. Jonathan says he is not looking for trouble and suggests that Wu Jin join their team instead. He explains that hunting together would be faster. Wu Jin considers the offer. Waiting for them to finish would waste time, and he prefers to avoid fighting humans. He decides to cooperate with them for the hunt, even though it means sharing the reward. However, he remains cautious and keeps his guard up. Wu Jin then asks Jonathan why he would invite a stranger when he already has a full team with him. Jonathan laughs and explains that he prefers safety over speed. For him, having more people reduces the risk, even if the reward must be shared. He also says he can tell that Wu Jin is strong. Wu Jin asks how he came to that conclusion. Jonathan points to the large wolf nearby. Mud had appeared from hiding and was now beside the group. A girl named Claire is already interacting with the wolf. She is surprised because wolf monsters are normally independent and almost impossible to tame. While Wu Jin watches, Claire feeds Mud a piece of cooked meat. The wolf focuses completely on the food and ignores everything else. However, when Wu Jin looks at him, Mud immediately drops the food and becomes obedient again. The sudden change surprises the mercenaries. Wu Jin notices the meat on the ground and realizes how hungry he is. After surviving on monster meat and scraps for years, the smell of proper food is difficult to ignore. Claire notices his hesitation and offers him fresh cooked meat. Wu Jin is surprised by the gesture. He did not expect someone in this world to offer him food without asking for anything in return. The group then begins moving deeper into the quarry. Jonathan leads the way while the others follow with lanterns to light the tunnels. While walking, Wu Jin eats the food. It tastes much better than the rough meals he has been living on. As they move through the mine, the group introduces themselves. Jonathan explains that he is the captain of the Black Marlin mercenaries, and Claire introduces herself as well. When it is his turn, Wu Jin gives the name Jin, choosing not to reveal his real identity. Jonathan welcomes him and tells him to ask questions if needed. Soon the group reaches the bottom of the quarry where the hunt will begin. Jonathan immediately starts organizing the team and orders the mercenaries to prepare their nets and take their assigned positions. Jonathan asks Claire if she is ready. She confirms and begins preparing a spell while Wu Jin watches. Feathers start drifting through the air as magical energy gathers around her. She opens a large magic book and a glowing magic circle forms on its pages. Wu Jin realizes that this is the same kind of magic mentioned in the chronicles he studied. Claire casts a spell called Feather Step. Green energy and white feathers spread through the area and surround the mercenaries. Wu Jin immediately feels his body become lighter as the magic takes effect. Jonathan praises Claire's skill. She reminds him that the spell will only last a few minutes. Jonathan then prepares to lure the monster out. His boots glow with magic as he runs into the quarry with great speed, leaving glowing feathers behind him. The rest of the team prepares the trap. They stretch large nets across the quarry floor and take their assigned positions. Wu Jin watches the formation and understands the plan. They intend to lure the Mad Skull into the trap and overwhelm it with coordinated attacks. Soon the monster appears. Jonathan runs toward the Mad Skull to draw its attention. The creature charges after him while he dodges its attacks and leads it toward the trap. At the right moment, the mercenaries pull the ropes. The massive Mad Skull becomes caught in the heavy nets. It struggles violently, thrashing its tusks and body while the team tries to hold it down. For a moment, the trap seems to work. Jonathan immediately signals the spear team to attack before the monster can escape. The hunters move in and surround the trapped beast, preparing to strike from all sides. The mercenaries move in and begin stabbing the trapped Mad Skull with their spears, hoping to finish the fight before it escapes. The monster roars in anger and struggles against the nets. Its strength quickly becomes clear as the ground shakes under its movements. The hunters holding the ropes are almost pulled off their feet. Within moments, the Mad Skull begins tearing through the nets. Wu Jin watches from a distance and realizes the plan is failing. The monster breaks free and throws several mercenaries aside. Panic spreads through the group as their formation collapses. With the last of the nets destroyed, the Mad Skull turns toward the hunters and prepares to attack. It suddenly charges toward Claire. She freezes as the beast rushes toward her, unable to react in time. Before it reaches her, Wu Jin moves forward and places himself between Claire and the monster. He braces himself and grabs one of the creature's large tusks with both hands, stopping its charge. The Mad Skull growls as it tries to push forward, but Wu Jin holds his ground. Claire warns him that the situation is too dangerous, but Wu Jin remains calm. From his experience fighting this monster before, he already understands how it behaves. He releases the tusk and moves quickly. Wu Jin jumps onto the Mad Skull and grabs its tusks. using his balance to avoid the monster's attacks while looking for an opening. The beast continues charging and attacking with great force. Wu Jin keeps moving around it, trying to find a weak point through its thick armor. He swings his blade several times, but realizes that breaking through its defense will not be easy. Even with his strength, fighting the Mad Skull directly begins to strain his body. The Mad Skull continues attacking with its massive tusks, trying to crush Wu Jin. During the fight, Wu Jin briefly loses focus and nearly gets hit. At that moment, white feathers begin to swirl around him. Claire casts another spell from a distance and sends additional mana toward him. The magic strengthens his body and makes him feel much lighter. With a new boost, Wu Jin quickly regains control of the fight. Jonathan and the other mercenaries move forward to help, but Wu Jin tells them to stay back. He decides to handle the fight alone so he can move freely without interference. Using the speed provided by Claire's spell, Wu Jin begins carefully studying the Mad Skull's movements. From his previous experience, he knows the monster's main weakness is its movement during charge. It can run very fast in a straight line, but its large body makes turning difficult. Wu Jin uses this weakness to guide the monster. He moves around the quarry and forces the Mad Skull to chase him. The creature repeatedly crashes into the walls while trying to keep up with his speed. Finally, Wu Jin leads it toward a large stone pillar. The Mad Skull cannot stop its charge in time and slams into the pillar. The impact shakes the area and causes the monster to lose its footing. The creature falls and slides across the ground, leaving it briefly exposed. Wu Jin immediately prepares to finish the fight. He realizes that the monster's tusks are extremely hard and difficult to cut, so he looks for a softer target. He focuses on the nose, which is one of the few vulnerable spots. Moving quickly with the help of the magic buff, Wu Jin strikes the Mad Skull's snout. The blow causes heavy bleeding and forces the monster to cry out in pain. With the creature weakened, Wu Jin continues attacking. Using his speed and precision, he delivers several strikes in quick succession, gradually wearing the monster down. The Mad Skull begins to weaken under Wu Jin's continuous attacks. After taking several precise strikes, the monster collapses. Wu Jin stands over the fallen creature with his blade covered in blood and finishes the fight. A short time later, Jonathan and Claire arrive at the scene. They stop when they see the destruction across the quarry. Before they can approach, Mutt stands between them and the battlefield. The red wolf growls and blocks their path, guarding the area. They wait until Wu Jin finally walks toward them through the dust. His mouth is stained with blood. During the fight, he had consumed the monster's essence. When they ask about the situation, Wu Jin calmly explains that the Mad Skull has already been taken care of. Behind him, the corpse of the creature lies on the ground. The mercenaries are shocked that he managed to defeat the monster alone. While they're still processing what happened, Mutt suddenly becomes alert. The wolf starts sniffing the air and growls toward a nearby tunnel. A second Mad Skull slowly emerges from the darkness. Jonathan prepares for another battle and tells the group to get ready. However, Claire stops everyone when she notices something unusual. The second Mad Skull is not alone. Two small piglets are walking beside it. The group realizes that the monster is a mother protecting its young. Wu Jin watches the situation quietly and does not attack. After a moment, the mother Mad Skull turns away with the piglets and disappears deeper into the ruins. The mercenaries watch as the monster family leaves without another fight. Jonathan and Claire are surprised that Wu Jin lets the mother Mad Skull leave with her piglets. Jonathan explains that the creature was likely only protecting its young. Claire shows some sympathy once the tension fades. Wu Jin says he is satisfied that the situation ended without another fight. Later, the group returns to the 5th Pioneer City at night. The city is active and well lit compared to the ruins they came from. They go to a tavern to celebrate the successful hunt. Inside, Jonathan congratulates everyone and announces that it is time to divide the reward. The mercenaries cheer and prepare to enjoy food and drinks. When the gold is placed on the table, Claire notices that the amount is larger than expected. Jonathan explains that he negotiated with the client and claimed that the team had faced 2 Mad Skulls and piglets. Because of the added danger, he demanded a larger payment. The total reward reaches 110 gold coins. The mercenaries approve of the captain's tactic and celebrate the result. Wu Jin asks how the client still paid when the second Mad Skull was not actually fought. Jonathan explains that as long as the client believes the story, the deal stands. After the explanation, Jonathan turns to Wu Jin and thanks him for his contribution during the hunt. He decides that Wu Jin should receive half of the total reward. The rest of the team agrees with the decision. Wu Jin is surprised by the offer because he expected them to keep most of the money. Jonathan insists that without Wu Jin, they would not have succeeded. Wu Jin accepts the reward and begins to reconsider his view of mercenaries. He realizes that cooperation can sometimes work in his favor. To show appreciation, he offers to pay for everyone's drinks that night. The tavern fills with cheers as the group celebrates together. During the celebration, Wu Jin notices that Claire quietly leaves the table. Wu Jin notices Claire leaving the tavern while the others continue celebrating. When he asks where she is going, she explains that she plans to practice magic before resting for the night. Even after the hunt, she remains focused on improving her skills. Later that night, Claire sits on a hill under the moon and begins meditating. Blue mana gathers around her as she concentrates. Wu Jin watches from a distance. He is surprised that she continues training despite being tired after the mission. Seeing the magic in action makes him think about learning it himself. Until now, he has relied only on physical strength, but magic could make him more effective. He approaches Claire and asks if she can teach him. Claire agrees immediately. She explains that she wanted to thank him anyway for protecting her during the battle with the Mad Skull. Jonathan overhears the conversation and reminds them that learning magic takes time. Their group is also scheduled to leave the village in 2 days. He suggests that Wu Jin travel with them if he wants to continue learning from Claire. Jonathan also asks why someone as strong as Wu Jin would want to join their group. Wu Jin avoids the question and instead asks where they are heading next. Jonathan explains that they are traveling to the 4th Pioneer City for another job. Wu Jin says that he was already planning to go there and asks if he can join their caravan. Jonathan and Claire realize he is not being completely honest, but they agree anyway. Jonathan welcomes him to the group. Soon the group begins their journey. Instead of horses, they travel on the back of a massive armored creature called a Tarrasque, a monster that humans have domesticated to transport goods across long distances. Wu Jin is surprised by its size and learns that such creatures are commonly used for travel in this world. The caravan sets out toward the 4th Pioneer City. That night during the journey, Wu Jin sits alone and begins practicing meditation as Claire instructed. He quickly realizes that learning magic is difficult and requires constant repetition. Wu Jin continues practicing meditation to sense mana. Sweat covers his body, but he refuses to stop. Claire demonstrates by creating a small light orb and explains that learning magic takes time and patience. Wu Jin focuses on the exercises she taught him. The process is repetitive and slow, but he keeps going. His past experience surviving the nightmare world helps him endure the frustration. After 10 days of training, he finally senses a small reaction. A tiny blue spark appears in front of him. For the first time, he can feel the mana in the air responding. Claire is pleased with the progress. She explains that many people never manage to sense mana at all. Now that he can feel it, they move to the next stage of training. Claire prepares a ritual to help him contain mana inside his body. She pours a glowing blue liquid into a small basin and explains that it will be used during the process. She then instructs Wu Jin to remove his clothes so she can draw a magic circle directly on his back. Under the moonlight in the forest, Claire dips her fingers into the glowing liquid and carefully draws the circle across his skin. While doing so, she notices the many scars on his back from past battles. Once the circle is completed, she tells him to concentrate and prepare for the next step. Wu Jin closes his eyes and enters deep meditation. Claire places her hand near the magic circle and begins the ritual. Mana starts flowing through the circle and enters Wu Jin's body. Blue light spreads across the campsite as the energy moves through him. Wu Jin feels a strong surge of power traveling inside his body, heavier and more intense than anything he has experienced before. The mana continues moving through Wu Jin's body, forming a path inside him. Claire asks if he can feel it, and Wu Jin confirms that he can. The sensation is strong, but he manages to remain calm. She explains that he has completed the first stage of magic training. According to her, learning magic involves 3 basic stages. The first stage is sensing mana. The second stage is containing that mana inside the body. The third stage is using the stored energy to cast spells. Since Wu Jin handled the infusion well, Claire decides to move directly to the second stage. She instructs him to guide the mana inside his body toward his heart so that it can be stored there. Wu Jin focuses on controlling the energy, but the process becomes difficult. The pressure from the mana continues to increase while he tries to keep it stable. The magic circle on his back glows brightly as the ritual continues. At that moment, Claire's consciousness is suddenly pulled into Wu Jin's mental space. Inside, she finds herself in a dark an unfamiliar place. A massive mantis-like creature stands there, covered in spikes and surrounded by an oppressive presence. Its many red eyes stare directly at her. The sight immediately overwhelms her. She realizes that the mental world inside Woojin is extremely abnormal. The mana around her becomes unstable, and the connection between them begins to break. Back in the forest, the ritual loses control. Claire feels her own mana being drained rapidly. Before the situation becomes worse, Mutt suddenly appears from the shadows. The red wolf moves forward and uses its tail to pull Claire away from the ritual. Mutt stands beside her, its blue eyes glowing while it guards both her and Woojin. Claire watches the wolf in shock, realizing that the creature just prevented the ritual from completely overwhelming her. Mutt does not attack, but stands protectively between Claire and Woojin. His behavior makes it clear that he is guarding his master. Claire realizes that the wolf likely stepped in because the ritual had become dangerous. Woojin turns and notices that she has collapsed on the ground. He calmly asks if she is all right, unaware of what she experienced during the ritual. Claire struggles to respond. She had briefly seen Woojin's mental realm. Every person has a mental space that reflects their nature and experiences. Normally, it appears calm or neutral, but the place she saw inside Woojin was completely different. In his mental world, she witnessed a massive mantis-like creature surrounded by countless red eyes. The presence felt predatory and unnatural. Even while speaking to him, the image still lingers in her mind. Claire becomes serious and asks him a direct question. She wants to know if he has ever consumed a mana core, the crystal found inside monsters. Woojin is confused by her reaction and casually confirms that he has eaten them before. Claire is shocked that he survived at all and asks how many he consumed. Woojin explains that he has been eating them for about 10 years and has consumed thousands of them during that time. Claire is alarmed by the answer. She explains that humans are not supposed to consume mana cores. According to common knowledge, a person who eats even one core will either die from the power or eventually turn into a monster. Woojin listens to the explanation but does not appear concerned. Under the moonlight, he remains focused on the power he has gained rather than the danger she describes. Karma is the name given to the dark energy that fills the demonic realm. Living beings that absorb this energy can develop unusual abilities. When karma gathers inside a monster's body for a long time, it forms a monster core, which acts as the creature's internal nucleus. The next morning, the group prepares to travel to the fourth pioneer city. While they're getting ready, Claire remains troubled by something. She remembers stories from the past. When the otherworldly gate opened and karma spread across the world, some humans began following the monsters that absorbed it. These people called the monsters angels. They consumed monster cores and even sacrificed humans to monsters. Those followers were known as dark priests. Claire recalls Woojin saying that he had been eating monster cores for nearly 10 years. She begins to wonder if he could be connected to those people. However, she quickly doubts it. A dark priest would never openly admit to eating monster cores, nor would they show their mental world to someone else. Still, the situation feels strange to her. Even if Woojin did not know the danger, she cannot understand why someone would eat monster cores in the first place. When she asks him about it, Woojin simply explains that he once saw monsters eating the cores and decided to copy them. Claire immediately warns him to stop doing that. She tells him that he has only survived so far by chance, and that continuing could kill him. Woojin thinks about her warning. According to her explanation, eating monster cores should either kill a person or turn them into a monster. Yet he has survived for years. He also begins to question whether the changes in his behavior, such as feeling no guilt after killing and constantly wanting to fight, might be connected to the cores. He says that he will try to stop. Claire becomes angry and insists that he must stop completely. She also adds that continuing to eat monster cores could prevent him from using magic. This statement immediately shocks Woojin. Claire explains that although his condition may make mana manifestation difficult, he should still be able to use something called mana arts. Woojin asks what mana arts are. After some time traveling, the group finally reaches the fourth pioneer city. Inside the city, they walk through busy streets until they reach a large plaza with a fountain. Many mercenaries have gathered there. Woojin notices the crowd and comments on the number of mercenaries present. Claire explains that the request they came for is very large, and that it is being overseen by a holy knight. Soon a man appears among the crowd, Holy Knight Raymond. Woojin observes him and immediately senses that his presence is far stronger than that of ordinary mercenaries. He asks Claire if crowds usually gather when a holy knight is involved. Claire explains that this mission was requested by someone known as the Golden Bug. Wu Jin asks if that name refers to some kind of insect monster. Claire tells him that the Golden Bug is not a monster, but a famous businessman. Jonathan adds that the Golden Bug was one of the wealthiest figures around. However, the man died suddenly not long ago. Wu Jin asks if the Golden Bug died suddenly because he was murdered. Jonathan replies that there are rumors about that, but nothing has been confirmed. Wu Jin then wonders why so many people have gathered if the Golden Bug is already dead. Jonathan explains that the Golden Bug had 2 sons. They inherited his fortune, and the job now is to transport that wealth inside the protective barrier. That is the request that brought all the mercenaries together. Wu Jin realizes that moving the fortune of such a wealthy man would naturally attract many mercenary groups. Soon an announcement calls the Black Marlin mercenary group forward. Jonathan pulls Wu Jin with him, saying that it is finally their turn. Inside the registration room, Jonathan introduces Wu Jin as the strongest fighter in their group. He claims that Wu Jin defeated a mad skull and tamed a werewolf. The people inside react with surprise and begin whispering. Some mention the nickname Head Crusher. Wu Jin is confused by the nickname, but Jonathan tells him to accept it for now because it helps their reputation. A white-haired official announces that the Black Marlin group will receive 100 gold coins, and the mission will begin the next morning. Wu Jin is surprised that transporting cargo pays so much. Jonathan explains that half of the payment is for the work, and the other half depends on the reputation of mercenaries. Wu Jin's new nickname helped them receive a better rate. Jonathan then explains that Head Crusher refers to how Wu Jin defeats monsters. Wu Jin thinks the nickname is poorly chosen, but he also realizes that having a reputation could help him attract attention and eventually learn mana arts. Later that night, the scene shifts to the mercenary quarters. Inside, an arena fight is taking place while spectators watch and cheer. Wu Jin prepares to enter the arena. Claire asks if he is sure about participating. Wu Jin explains that he wants to attract the attention of the Holy Knight so he can learn mana arts. According to the chronicles, Holy Knights often show interest in strong fighters. Wu Jin enters the arena and studies the surroundings. His first opponent attacks immediately, but Wu Jin easily avoids the strike and counters with a series of blows. The opponent falls to the ground. The crowd cheers and calls him Head Crusher. Another fighter steps forward as the next challenger. Wu Jin defeats opponent after opponent, continuing to win multiple matches without being injured. While fighting, he focuses on drawing the Holy Knight's attention. He believes that defeating many opponents will make the Knight notice him. From a balcony above the arena, Holy Knight Raymond watches the fight. After observing Wu Jin's performance, he tells his companion Rex to fight him. Rex is annoyed at the idea of facing a mercenary. Wu Jin notices the situation and realizes that the Knight intends to test him through his apprentice. At that moment, Wu Jin refuses the challenge. He does this deliberately, intending to begin negotiations that could lead to him learning mana arts. Rex stares at him in surprise. The mercenary dormitory stands under the night sky with the full moon above. Claire looks ahead quietly with a worried expression, while Jonathan remains tense beside her. Inside the arena, the crowd grows confused as Jin refuses to fight. From the balcony, Rex grips the railing and demands an explanation. Raymond stands calmly beside him, watching. Raymond asks if Jin is injured. Jin shows no signs of damage and remains relaxed. When asked why he refused, Jin explains that he is a mercenary who does not fight without gain and proposes a wager. Raymond considers the idea and asks what Jin could offer. Jin presents a pouch filled with gold, drawing shock from the crowd. Rex reacts with anger, but Raymond stops him and rejects the money. Instead, Raymond declares that they will remove all liability for any damage during the duel. Jin accepts the condition and decides to reveal his demand only after the fight. Rex and Jin take their positions in the arena. Rex tightens his bandages and focuses. Jin stands calmly, observing him. The spectators gather closer, shouting and placing bets. Claire watches anxiously from behind while Jonathan stays ready, telling Jin to signal if things get dangerous. Jin shows no concern and remains confident. Rex asks how far he should go. Raymond instructs him to fight seriously, recognizing Jin as a capable opponent. Golden energy begins to gather around Rex's body. The crowd reacts as they recognize the use of mana arts. Rex launches forward at high speed, closing the distance instantly. Jin notices the difference in speed, but stays focused. Rex lands a direct strike with heavy force. Jin takes the hit, blood appearing at the edge of his mouth, and realizes the danger of a clean blow. Rex continues attacking with controlled, reinforce strikes. Jin studies the movement closely, recognizing the use of mana arts. As another strike comes in, Jin raises his bandaged hand and blocks it, holding his ground while observing the technique. Rex drives his glowing fist downward, golden energy bursting on impact as the strike sends Jin sliding across the arena floor. Jin wipes the blood from his mouth and steadies himself. Rex steps forward, energy flickering around his body, making it clear he is taking control of the fight. The spectators react, realizing the gap between a mercenary and a Holy Knight apprentice. Claire watches with concern, while Raymond observes silently. Rex attacks again, closing the distance with enhanced speed. Jin braces and blocks, but the force still pushes him back. He continues defending, letting the strikes land while carefully observing the flow of mana. Raymond notices the shift. Jin, who had overwhelmed earlier opponents instantly, is now moving passively and only blocking. He begins to suspect Jin is studying rather than fighting. Rex leaps and brings down another enhanced strike. Jin redirects it at the last moment, sending the impact crashing into the arena structure. The ground breaks from the force. Jonathan reacts in shock, realizing Jin deflected mana arts with his bare hand. Jin straightens, wipes the blood from his mouth, and settles his stance. He concludes his observation and shifts from defense to offense. He steps forward and lands a clean strike. The impact is simple but heavy. Rex's expression changes immediately as the damage sets in. Raymond notices the reaction and realizes the hit carried more weight than expected. Jin had been holding back and reading the fight the entire time. Rex staggers, struggling to steady his breathing. Jin stands beside him, calm, showing no urgency. He checks Rex's condition and notes that the durability comes from mana reinforcement. Jin prepares to continue, intending to push further, but Raymond raises his hand and stops the match. He declares Rex's loss and ends the duel, honoring the earlier agreement. Jin remains relaxed, showing no frustration. He achieved his goal. The crowd erupts, reacting to the outcome. The scene shifts away from the arena. A large mansion stands under the night sky with a fountain in front. This is the residence of the Golden Bug family. Inside, two men sit at a table covered with food, eating without restraint. They are the heirs of the Golden Bug, Dronzer and Cedric, continuing their feast while the events outside begin to move toward them. At the Golden Bug mansion, the two heirs continue eating at a crowded table. Dronzer and Cedric complain about the delay in entering the barrier, saying it will take 10 days. They blame the Order Alliance while continuing to eat. One of them shows signs of instability, with glowing blue growths spreading across his back. He mentions that they only need to endure until they reach safety. The growths pulse as his body struggles to hold together. Elsewhere, Raymond stands near a tree and demonstrates mana arts. He explains that mana is used like part of the body to enhance strength and weapons, and that its effectiveness depends on skill. He draws his sword and releases a technique. A golden slash cuts through the air, sending a shockwave across the area. The surroundings shake from the force before settling again. Rex reacts with excitement, praising the display, while Raymond remains composed. Jin watches silently. He studies the technique and compares it to what he observed earlier, noting the difference in strength. Raymond tells him to focus and begin practicing. Jin grips his sword while Raymond explains how mana should be controlled through the body, similar to muscle movement. Jin follows the instruction, recognizing similarities with what Claire taught him. Blue mana begins to flow through Jin's body. He notices the amount feels unusually large. A brief memory surfaces of Claire transferring mana during the ritual. The energy inside him shifts. Dark purple mana begins to form, wrapping around his body and sword. The flow becomes dense and unstable. Raymond immediately reacts, noticing the abnormal change. Jin continues holding his stance as the energy gathers around his blade. The mana thickens, taking on a heavy and ominous presence. Raymond observes closely and explains that mana reflects a person's inner world. The color and nature of the energy come from within. Seeing the unnatural aura, Raymond questions what kind of power exists inside Jin. Jin raises his sword as dense purple mana coils around his body and blade. He swings, releasing a wide arc of energy that throws his body off balance. He steadies himself and brings the sword down again, forcing more power through it. He pauses and evaluates the result. The output feels strong, but inefficient compared to the effort. Even so, he shows clear interest in using it in real combat. The group travels across open land with large transport beasts carrying supplies. Jin walks beside Claire, who acknowledges how quickly he learned mana arts. He credits her help and asks if she is fine after the earlier transfer of mana. Claire avoids the concern and brushes it off as repayment. Jin reflects that the large amount of mana inside him played a major role in accelerating his progress. Rex approaches on horseback and comments on Jin's attitude. He warns him not to become complacent and reminds him to respect Raymond. Jin reacts casually, showing little concern. He even considers provoking Rex again out of boredom. Before anything escalates, Raymond intervenes and sends Rex ahead, keeping the situation under control. As the group continues moving, noise breaks out ahead. Supplies are scattered, and workers react to the disturbance. Some explain that the commotion comes from the Golden Bug heirs. Since the death of Golden Bug Wolf, Dereric and Cedric have been unstable, constantly eating and reacting aggressively when delayed. Raymond advises ignoring them, stating it is not worth getting involved. Jin watches the situation from a distance. The behavior does not look normal to him. He suspects something beyond simple stress and begins to feel that something is wrong. Jin watches the situation closely as the condition of the Golden Bug heirs worsens. One of them begins to lose control, his body reacting violently. The more he consumes, the stronger the presence around him feels. His body starts to distort, as if something inside is about to break out. Jin senses the change immediately. His expression turns serious as the pressure in the air shifts. Without warning, a massive Tarrasque erupts upward, throwing debris into the air. The creature begins rampaging, shaking the entire area. Workers panic as they realize the beast carrying the clients has gone out of control. Raymond reacts instantly and calls for Rex. Both prepare to intervene, prioritizing the safety of the clients. As they move in, the situation escalates further. Dark spikes suddenly burst out from inside the Tarrasque's body. Something tears its way out from within, destroying everything around it. A grotesque mass of tentacles emerges, forming a twisted creature with a circular, tooth-filled mouth. The sound it produces is unnatural. Claire identifies it as an abomination, something created when a human is consumed by the demonic realm's karma. Jin understands immediately. The transformation confirms what he suspected. Raymond attacks first. He launches into the air and delivers a full-powered strike, splitting the creature in half with a golden slash. The body separates, but the threat does not end. Rex follows up with another attack, cutting through the remains and scattering them. For a moment, it appears finished. Then the creature regenerates. Its body reforms instantly, rising again behind Rex before he can react. Raymond shouts a warning, but it is too late. The abomination closes in and swallows Rex in a single motion. Jin freezes for a brief moment, taking in what just happened. Claire and the others are left stunned. Raymond moves immediately, charging forward with his weapon ready, focusing entirely on saving Rex from inside the creature. Raymond tightens his grip and releases another sacred fire slash, cutting through the abomination's body again. Flesh splits and blood sprays, but the creature keeps moving. He lands on its surface and calls out, trying to reach Rex inside. Dark tendrils rise and strike toward him. Before they hit, Jin steps in, grabs Raymond, and pulls him out of range. The tendrils are cut apart as they retreat. Jin lands and sets Raymond down, but the knight is already injured. Behind them, panic spreads as people realize the Holy Knight has fallen. The abomination stands upright again. Its body swells and shifts, tendrils moving in every direction. Its mouth opens wide, teeth exposed, red eyes fixed forward. Jin watches it carefully. The thought crosses his mind that continued use of monster cores could lead to the same outcome. He sets that aside and focuses on the fight. The creature attacks. Jin moves forward instead of retreating. Tendrils lash toward him, but he cuts through them while advancing. The monster's body breaks apart and reforms continuously, making direct damage ineffective. He adjusts his approach, conserving energy and watching for a weakness. The fight turns into a test of endurance. A heavy tendril strike crashes into his blade. He blocks and pushes back, but the pressure keeps increasing. Support arrives. Jonathan throws a spear from a distance. It hits with force and clears space by tearing through several tendrils. At the same time, Claire steps forward, activating her magic. A spell forms above her hand as light gathers, reinforcing the fighters. Other mercenaries move in, their movements enhanced, ready to join the fight. Jin glances back briefly, confirming support has arrived, then returns his focus to the abomination as the group prepares to fight together. A mercenary raises his spear and calls out that the creature's regeneration is slowing under Claire's magic. Others follow up, coordinating to keep severed flesh from reattaching. Jin notices the shift and shows a brief, approving smile. The group is holding their ground. Black fluid begins to fall from above. The abomination's body swells and twists, and its energy changes. New faces push out from its shoulders, distorted, human-like forms. Someone identifies them as the golden bug heirs, fused into the creature. The monster reacts violently. Tendrils shoot out in every direction, striking the ground and forcing the fighters back. Flesh stretches and reforms at the ends of the tendrils as it pulls scattered pieces back into itself. Jin moves in any way. He cuts through the mass with repeated strikes, but the creature continues to regenerate. One of the embedded faces distorts and roars as the surrounding flesh shifts again. Jonathan calls out, checking on him. Jin confirms he is fine, but warns that the creature has become stronger. The group reassesses. Jin states that they need to keep cutting until only the core remains, though the main issue is the regeneration speed. Jonathan responds that they have already adapted to its attack patterns and can keep up. Jin accepts that and steps forward again, activating his mana arts. Purple energy gathers along his blade as he commits to the attack. He charges the creature and cuts through multiple tendrils in a single sweep. He follows with another strike, carving deep into its body. Blood sprays as the abomination reacts, but the team continues pressing, focusing on preventing regeneration while Jin leads the assault. Rapid strikes tear through the abomination's body as Jin keeps cutting without pause. Flesh splits apart and a glowing blue core is finally exposed beneath the mass. He steps in and brings his blade down. The core is cleaved in a single motion, purple energy splitting it apart. Blood bursts outward and the creature collapses. The battlefield falls quiet. Jonathan lowers his spear, breathing heavily. Nearby fighters begin cheering, realizing the abomination is gone. Claire stands beside the injured Raymond, watching the aftermath. Fragments of the shattered core scatter across the ground, their glow fading. The group celebrates, convinced the fight is over. Jin remains silent. His attention shifts to a small fragment still pulsing faintly on the ground. He picks it up and studies it. At a distance, a red-haired woman watches from behind a tree. She observes the group calmly, noting the outcome and the state of the golden bug heirs. Her focus settles on Jin as he walks away with the core. Later, at a quiet campsite, Jin sits alone. He holds the glowing core in his hand and examines it for a moment before biting into it. The moment he consumes it, something changes. A vision forms. Jin finds himself inside someone else's memory. A man is restrained on a stone slab, struggling in fear. The red-haired woman stands beside him, speaking coldly while holding a vial filled with glowing liquid. She forces the substance into the man's eye. His body reacts immediately. Dark veins spread, and tendrils begin to form as he screams. Jin watches the scene unfold. Realizing this is how the transformation began. The vision ends abruptly. Back in reality, Jin recoils and spits, his body reacting to what he just experienced. Jin rushes into the forest clearing, struggling to steady himself. He collapses and spits out the aftereffects of consuming the core. His body reacts violently, confirming that monster cores carry heavy side effects, including fragments of memory. He regains his footing and thinks through what he saw. The memory clearly belonged to one of the golden bug heirs. The transformation into an abomination was not natural. It was triggered by a substance forced into the eye. The image of the glowing liquid and the red-haired woman becomes clear in his mind. Jin concludes that the liquid was likely condensed karma. That leads him to a single possibility, a dark priest. Claire approaches and urges him to leave. She notices his condition and questions him. Jin hesitates, considering whether to explain what he experienced, but decides against it. He dismisses it and keeps moving, choosing to keep the information to himself for now. From a distance, the red-haired woman watches them again, hidden behind the trees. She studies Jin with interest, noting his behavior and the fact that he consumes monster cores. She questions whether he will become an ally or an enemy in the future. Later, the group gathers at a burial site. Several graves are marked with swords. Raymond stands in front, holding his weapon as he offers a prayer. Rex is honored for his sacrifice. Claire prays quietly while the others stand in silence. Jin watches without speaking. He only fought Rex once, but recognizes his resolve. The moment is interrupted. Raymond looks up suddenly. On a nearby rock stands a red wolf, its blue eyes glowing. The presence is unusual enough that Raymond kneels and offers thanks to the god of harmony, treating the appearance as a sign. Jin looks at him, confused by the reaction. The wolf simply yawns, showing no hostility, as the scene settles into silence. Raymond keeps his head bowed, treating the appearance of the red wolf as a divine sign. To him, it is no ordinary beast. It is a sacred companion of the god of harmony. Jin, however, completely breaks the atmosphere. He casually says it is just his pet. That single statement shatters the solemn mood. Raymond snaps, calling it outright blasphemy. A creature the order itself could never tame is being called a mutt so casually. To him, that is unacceptable. Jin doesn't argue. He simply calls the wolf. The red wolf reacts instantly. It leaps down from the cliff without hesitation and lands directly in front of him, obedient and alert. That is all the proof needed. Raymond is left stunned, forced to accept what he is seeing with his own eyes. The situation shifts. Raymond studies Jin more seriously now. A man who can tame something sacred to the order is not normal by any standard. He then makes a request. He asks Jin to give the wolf a proper name, Rex. The reason is not pride, but respect. Rex died fighting, holding onto his blade until the very end. Raymond wants that wolf to live on, even if only through a name. Jin pauses. He looks at the wolf, gauging its reaction. The beast does not resist, so he agrees. From that moment on, the red wolf carries the name Rex, inheriting the legacy of a fallen knight. Raymond's expression softens slightly. It is a rare moment of quiet gratitude. Before the moment can settle, a new presence arrives. An elderly man approaches, leaning on a cane, radiating quiet authority. Bo steps forward, accompanied by another monk. Even Raymond straightens immediately and greets him with respect. The atmosphere shifts again, this time not with tension, but with weight. Jin watches silently. If this man is an elder, then he stands near the top of authority in this region. Bo apologizes for arriving during a time of mourning, but his presence alone suggests something important is about to unfold. The calm after the battle is already over. Something bigger is beginning. The tension thickened the moment the elder revealed his purpose. Bo had not come for pleasantries. The deaths of the Golden Bug sons were no longer just an unfortunate incident. They had become a matter requiring scrutiny. While the evidence presented by Raymond was sufficient to dismiss immediate blame, something far more troubling remained unresolved. The transformation into abominations. That single detail shifted everything. Bo's gaze settled on Jin with quiet intensity. It was an accusation spoken aloud, but suspicion sharpened by experience. To him, the situation carried a distinct trace, something foul, something familiar. The unmistakable presence of a dark priest lingered over the incident, and Jin stood too close to it to ignore. Jin understood immediately. From the outside, the suspicion was logical. A stranger with no past, appearing out of nowhere and achieving feats beyond reason, standing at the center of a catastrophe involving forbidden transformation. Even without proof, the pattern alone was enough to raise doubt. The scene shifted to the arena, isolating the matter from prying eyes. An empty battleground stretched beneath dim torchlight, its silence heavy with intent. There would be no formal questioning here, only a test. Bo's reasoning unfolded calmly, almost methodically. Strength of Jin's level was not something that appeared overnight. Men like him were usually known, tracked, recorded from a young age. Yet Jin had no such history. No record. No origin. Only results. Too many results. To Bo, that absence of a past was louder than any explanation. Jin stood across from him, silent, absorbing the logic behind the suspicion. It wasn't entirely unreasonable. In a world like this, strength without origin was often tied to something unnatural. Still, the method felt excessive. Even Raymond showed hesitation, pointing out the obvious, that Jin had just come out of a brutal fight and wasn't in perfect condition. But the elder dismissed the concern without a second thought. To him, cooperation was not optional. Refusal itself would only deepen suspicion. Jin's thoughts tightened. Fighting back recklessly would only confirm the worst assumptions. Yet standing still would place him entirely at the mercy of a man who had already decided to test him through force. Before he could settle on a response, Bo made the decision for him. The cane slipped from his grasp. His posture straightened, and in that instant, the old man disappeared. A dense golden aura surged from his body, controlled and heavy, pressing against the air itself. This wasn't reckless power. It was refined, honed through years of discipline and battle. His foot struck the ground. Then he moved. Jin's eyes widened. Too fast. The distance collapsed in a single step, and before his body could fully react, Bo's palm was already driving forward. The motion was simple, almost understated, but the force behind it was anything but. A compressed shockwave exploded on impact. Jin's breath shattered as the strike connected, his body twisting under the sudden pressure. Blood burst from his mouth as the force rippled through him, spiraling outward and sending him flying. He crashed into the arena wall. Wood splintered. The brazier beside him rattled violently as debris scattered across the floor. Raymond reacted immediately, but there was no time to intervene. The gap between him and Bo was no longer something that could be bridged with words. Jin forced himself upright through the dust, one hand pressed against his mouth as blood stained his fingers. Bo didn't pause. Wrapped in a dense golden aura, he moved again, each step controlled yet overwhelming. His attacks carried not just force, but intent, precision that left no room for error. Every strike landed where it would hurt the most, exploiting openings before they even fully formed. Jin barely managed to react. A blow struck deep into his torso, forcing the air out of his lungs. Another followed, pressing him further back. Yet in the middle of the exchange, something shifted. He noticed it. The pain didn't linger the way it should have. His eyes widened slightly as he steadied himself, his grip tightening around his weapon. Injuries that should have crippled him, wounds that should have slowed him down, were already fading. Healing. Fast. Too fast. The realization struck harder than any blow. The battle with the abomination, the damage he had taken, the exhaustion that should have followed, it was all gone. Even the injuries from just moments ago were already closing, as if his body refused to remain broken. A faint grin crept across his face. The answer was obvious. The core he had consumed hadn't just given him strength. It had given him regeneration. The fight changed. Jin stepped forward instead of retreating, his movements sharper, more confident. His blade cut through the air, aiming for an opening, but Bo deflected it effortlessly, his expression calm beneath the veil of power surrounding him. To the elder, this only confirmed something. This wasn't the condition of a man fresh from battle. This was something else entirely. Still, he restrained himself. The purpose of this encounter was not to destroy, but to understand. With one final controlled strike, he drove his palm into Jin's chest and forced distance between them. The clash ended as suddenly as it began. Then the atmosphere shifted again. Bo raised his hand toward his blindfold. The golden aura around him deepened, becoming quieter, heavier. The air itself seemed to still as a faint circular glow began to form, centered around him like a silent, watchful presence. This was no longer a test of strength. It was something deeper. The mind's eye. The world around them dissolved. For a brief moment, everything fell away. Darkness spread, swallowing the arena, replacing it with something far more unsettling. Jin's inner world. It was not calm. It was not stable. It was a nightmare. A vast void filled with grotesque shapes, shadowy forms shifting in the distance. Countless eyes opening and closing in the dark, watching, waiting. A presence loomed beyond form. Something ancient and predatory. Something that did not belong to any normal human soul. Even Bo, who had cast aside his physical sight to perceive deeper truths, faltered. For the first time, his composure cracked. This was not simply unpleasant. It was terrifying, and yet it was intact, not broken, not consumed. Jin's mind had not collapsed into madness. It had endured. That single fact answered everything. The vision shattered. Reality returned. Bo staggered slightly, his breath heavier than before, a thin layer of sweat forming across his face. The golden aura around him faded as he steadied himself. When he looked at Jin again, the suspicion was gone. In its place was certainty. Jin was not a dark priest. Whatever he was, it was something else entirely. The elder brought his palms together in quiet acknowledgement. For the first time, he offered an apology. The test had been necessary. And now, with the truth confirmed, The reason for it could finally be revealed. This was never just about suspicion. It was about selection. At that moment, a presence emerged at the doorway. A pink-haired girl stepped out of the house and revealed that she had come to entrust him with a request concerning the Dark Priests. The protagonist turned toward her, his gaze sharpening as he silently questioned her identity. Closing the distance between them, she carried herself with quiet confidence and introduced herself as Cindy, the youngest daughter of the Golden Bug family. The scene shifted to a forest, where Jin moved quietly through the trees alongside Bao and Cindy. As they advanced, Cindy explained that this was not the first appearance of fiends. Recently, around the third pioneer city, more people had been turning into fiends, and even the surrounding forests were being corrupted into demon realms. Jin considered her words, trying to grasp what she meant by contamination, but before he could dwell on it, Cindy stopped and indicated that they had arrived. Following her gaze, Jin saw a massive creature ahead, its core glowing with a deep violet light. Church soldiers surrounded it, attempting to control the situation. Nearby, several high-ranking clergy knelt in prayer, while others in protective masks continuously sprayed holy water onto the core. Watching the scene unfold, Jin understood that it was a rift core, an object that gradually spread the demon realm, corrupting everything around it. Cleansing something like that was clearly no simple task. He then recalled a key limitation, noting that karma's power weakened the farther one moved from the Northern Empire. Cindy confirmed this, which made the current situation even more unusual. It suggested that someone was actively interfering behind the scenes. Jin immediately connected it to the Dark Priests. Cindy went on to explain that if fiends and rift cores continued to increase at this rate, the third pioneer city, built with great effort, would soon face a serious crisis, possibly even total collapse. Bao added that they had been carefully tracking the Dark Priests and had finally identified a suspected hideout. A purge operation was planned in 2 weeks, and they wanted Jin to join, offering the highest level of payment. Jin realized this was the request they had mentioned. Looking at the two of them, Elder Bao of the Third Pioneer City and Cindy, the last heir of the Golden Bug family, he understood the weight behind the offer. Being approached by figures like them meant his abilities were finally being recognized. The scene then shifted again. Jin now traveled with a group of mercenaries, moving alongside their cavalry. Claire approached him, her concern evident as she reflected on how dangerous things could have been if he had been mistaken for a dark priest. The thought briefly led Jin to imagine such a grim outcome. Their conversation ended as they reached their destination. Ahead stood a massive city enclosed within a barrier, Langvar, known as the Barrier City of Yurgis. Its sheer scale far surpassed the pioneer cities, and it was regarded as the safest place in the world. Jin took in the sight, wondering if he might live there someday, but knowing that time had not yet come. Turning away, he called out to Raymond. As Raymond looked over, Jin suggested they rest for a while before continuing onward. The mercenaries set their belongings aside and settled down to rest and eat, while the massive turtle-like beasts lay quietly beside them. After a while, Jonathan approached Jin and brought up his sudden departure for the third pioneer city. Jin confirmed that he had taken on a new request, and Jonathan couldn't help but feel a hint of regret. In their line of work, parting ways after a job was normal, yet it never felt entirely easy. When Jin asked about their plans, Jonathan casually implied he would spend his time drinking, and one of his companions echoed the same idea. Hearing that, Jin could only think how typical it was of them. He then turned to Claire. Unlike the others, she planned to look for another job. Though she had earned a fair amount, it still wasn't enough for her goal, reaching the Mage Tower. She explained that despite being a mage, her knowledge was limited to the basics, and she wanted to learn higher-level magic. For that, she needed money. Jin reflected on her words, realizing the Mage Tower was essentially a place for advanced study. The effort she was putting in to improve herself left an impression on him. After a brief pause, he reached into his bag and took out a pouch filled with gold. Claire looked at him in confusion as he offered it to support her goal. Though she was momentarily excited, she quickly refused, feeling it would be improper to accept something like that. Jin insisted, making it clear that it wasn't just a gift, but also his way of repaying her for everything she had done. His words left Jonathan and the others visibly surprised. Claire still hesitated, but before she could refuse again, Jin placed the pouch in her hands and turned to leave. He told her they would meet again and began walking away. For a moment, She stood there in disbelief before quickly reaching out and grabbing his clothes to stop him. When he turned back, she thanked him sincerely and promised to repay the favor someday. Jin looked at her for a brief moment, then bid farewell to everyone. Jonathan waved him off, and the rest of the group followed, sending him off as he departed. Nearby, Raymond glanced at Jin's red wolf and quietly wished it well. With his companion at his side, Jin left the group behind and continued on his way. Outside the castle walls, the expeditionary force prepared to move out. Among the marching soldiers, Jin glanced back toward the battlements and casually waved toward the figures watching from above. Beside him, the long column of armed men advanced in disciplined rhythm, their armor rattling in unison beneath the cloudy sky. High on the wall, Cindy watched him disappear into the crowd of soldiers before turning toward the elder standing beside her. Despite his calm demeanor, she could tell he was uneasy. The old priest tried to dismiss her concern, but Cindy pressed the matter further. Ever since learning about Jin consuming inner cores, doubt had taken root in her mind. To her, the danger seemed obvious. Everyone knew what happened to people who pursued the power hidden inside demonic beasts. They lost themselves. At best, they became addicts intoxicated by strength. At worst, they became monsters. That was common sense in this world. And yet the elder continued defending him. Cindy realized the truth almost immediately. Deep down, the elder still wanted to believe there was humanity left inside Jin despite everything surrounding him. The priest remained silent for a long moment. When he finally answered, his voice carried quiet finality. He no longer wished to continue the discussion. Cindy bit back her irritation, but she made her stance clear before leaving. For now, she would remain silent. However, the moment Jin crossed the line, she would personally accuse him of being a dark priest. And if that day ever came, even the elder who protected him would not escape responsibility. Without another word, she stepped away from the wall and disappeared into the castle. The elder watched her leave in silence. Unlike Cindy, he had already witnessed something impossible. Jin had consumed countless inner cores over the years, far more than any human should survive. Yet despite carrying power that bordered on monstrous, his inner world had never collapsed completely. It was terrifying, yes, but it remained intact. That alone separated him from true dark priests. The world simply was not ready to accept someone like him yet. Still, the elder was certain of one thing. The strange power Jin carried would someday become humanity's greatest hope. The scene shifted to the marching expeditionary force. Hundreds of soldiers advanced together beneath fluttering banners as they headed toward the northern forest beyond the third pioneer city. Spears struck the ground in rhythm while the men sang battle hymns that echoed across the open plains. This was the first expeditionary force. Their voices carried faith, discipline, and the grim resolve of soldiers marching toward death. Among them, Jin walked casually while testing his newly acquired ability. A small rock struck his forehead with enough force to split the skin open. Blood ran down his face, drawing confused looks from nearby soldiers. But Jin simply tossed the rock aside and calmly began counting under his breath. The wound slowly bulged and closed itself. Minute by minute, the torn flesh stitched back together. Regeneration, the ability gained from consuming the abomination's core, had already begun changing his body. Minor injuries healed within minutes, while deeper wounds recovered far faster than normal humans ever could. The implications excited him more than they frightened him. If even shattered bones could recover so quickly, then perhaps severed limbs could eventually regenerate as well. The thought alone sent anticipation running through him. To Jin, inner cores were no longer simply dangerous objects. They were opportunities. A voice interrupted his thoughts. Roland approached with amused disbelief after witnessing Jin smashing his own forehead open for experimentation. The commander quickly proved himself impossible to ignore. Loud, energetic, and endlessly fascinated by talent, Roland immediately labeled Jin a genius the moment they met. The title followed every sentence that left his mouth. Jin found him exhausting almost instantly. Trying to redirect the conversation, he asked about the expedition itself. Roland happily explained the operation as they marched. Their target was the cursed forest north of the third pioneer city. Hidden deep within it were rift cores, sources of demonic corruption that expanded monster territory and twisted the surrounding land. The plan was simple in theory. Destroy the rift cores of the forest entrance first, then push inward until the center was reached. The entire operation was expected to last roughly 10 days, depending on resistance. To Jin, the time frame sounded excessive. The forest itself was not particularly large, but Roland quickly explained the problem. The rift cores were changing the ecosystem itself. Creatures that normally lurked deep within the cursed lands had begun appearing near the outer regions. Even areas once considered safe were now contaminated. As if to prove his point, the ground behind Roland suddenly erupted. A massive rodent-like demon beast launched itself toward him from underground. Before nearby soldiers could even react, Roland unsheathed his sword and cleanly split the creature apart mid-leap without interrupting his explanation. Then the real attack began. The earth burst open across the battlefield as dozens of leech rats emerged from beneath the soil. Soldiers tightened their spear formations while alarms spread through the ranks. The creatures moved unnaturally fast, swarming isolated soldiers and biting into exposed flesh from every angle. Jin narrowed his eyes immediately. Leech rats were never supposed to burrow. The rift core corruption was evolving them. Roland barked orders through the chaos, forcing the soldiers to maintain formation and guard each other's backs. Any moment of panic would mean death. Then he noticed Jin. Unlike everyone else scrambling to fight, Jin stood completely still while multiple leech rats swarmed around him. Roland shouted in disbelief, but Jin barely reacted. With calm, almost absent-minded movements, he drew his dagger and began tearing through the creatures one by one. Flesh ripped apart beneath his blade as shrill screeches echoed through the battlefield. Then, to the horror of nearby soldiers, he started eating them. Blood covered his mouth as his eyes glowed a deep predatory red. But inside his mind, there was no disgust anymore. No hesitation, only curiosity. If consuming inner cores granted abilities, then perhaps devouring enough leech rats would allow him to inherit their burrowing traits as well. The demon beasts before him no longer resembled monsters. To Jin, they looked like walking collections of power. Nothing more than inner cores waiting to be consumed. Buried beneath a mountain of twitching leech rat corpses, Jin continued tearing through flesh in search of inner cores. The creatures swarmed over his body from every direction, biting and clawing at him relentlessly, but he barely reacted anymore. One hand plunged into a split-open carcass while the other crushed a freshly extracted core between his teeth. To him, inheritance was the true secret behind survival in the demon realm. Every consumed core carried a tiny possibility of granting a monster's abilities. That slim chance was what had allowed him to endure 12 brutal years in a world where ordinary humans died within days. Another core disappeared into his mouth. By now, he had consumed dozens of them. Exhaustion slowly crept into his body as he wondered whether the leech rat's burrowing ability had finally transferred to him. Unfortunately, despite devouring nearly 40 cores, nothing had changed. Inheritance still depended heavily on luck. That realization irritated him more than the monsters chewing on his body. Suddenly, a hand burst through the pile of corpses and grabbed his shoulder. A nearby soldier had forced his way through the battlefield to reach him. The man looked horrified at the sight of Jin buried beneath dead monsters and immediately tried pulling him free, assuming he had been overwhelmed. But instead of gratitude, Jin snapped at him for abandoning formation and running into danger. To the surrounding soldiers, he looked completely insane, covered in blood, half-devoured monster remains, and still worrying more about military formations than himself. Inside, however, Jin was frustrated for an entirely different reason. At this rate, he could no longer secretly consume inner cores without attracting attention. Before he could argue further, the soldier dragged him away from the battlefield and pointed toward the rear lines. The holy choir had begun. Drums thundered across the battlefield in perfect rhythm, while music surged through the expeditionary force. At the center of it all, Roland calmly played a piano as soldiers synchronized their movements around the melody. The effect was immediate. Fatigue vanished from the soldiers' faces as their morale and strength surged dramatically. Spears moved faster, shields held firmer, and fear itself seemed to disappear beneath the music. Jin quickly realized the truth. The Holy Choir was not simply morale support. It was a battlefield-wide enhancement technique. And more surprisingly, Roland, the man Jin assumed was a frontline swordsman, was actually a support specialist. The realization genuinely caught him off guard. With the choir strengthening the army, the expeditionary force launched a full counterattack and gradually overwhelmed the remaining leech rats. After the battle ended, the soldiers gathered near the camp to record combat achievements and distribute rewards. Nearby troops continued whispering about Jin in disbelief. First he smashed his own forehead open with a rock. Then he charged alone into a swarm of monsters. And afterward, instead of resting like everyone else, he spent hours digging holes in the ground, trying to test whether he had inherited the leech rat's burrowing ability. To the soldiers, the mercenary known as the Head Crusher looked less like a human and more like a walking disaster. Jin himself remained completely oblivious to the gossip. After several more failed attempts at digging, he finally accepted that he had not inherited the ability after all. The realization left him mildly disappointed, though not surprised. Inheritance had always been unreliable. Roland soon approached him with genuine concern, but the commander's worry quickly shifted into admiration once the battle results were tallied. Jin had killed over 200 leech rats entirely on his own. Even elite holy knights rarely achieved numbers that high. Naturally, Roland responded the same way he always did, by calling him a genius. Jin silently regretted ever meeting him. Still, the conversation gradually shifted into something more meaningful. Curious about the Holy Choir, Jin asked Roland whether he truly specialized in support techniques. Roland initially became defensive, almost offended by the question, before eventually admitting the truth. He had originally wanted to become a swordsman, but the Order Alliance fought to protect humanity, and after witnessing countless people lose their homes and families to the demonic domain, he chose the role he believed could save the most lives. His swordsmanship was only decent. His musical talent, however, was exceptional. For perhaps the first time, Jin began viewing Roland differently. Behind the noisy personality and endless praise was someone genuinely devoted to protecting others. That realization earned a small amount of respect from him. 1 week later, the expeditionary force had advanced deep into the corrupted territory. Numerous rift cores had already been destroyed, and stronger monsters appeared with every passing day. Kobolds, giant beasts, and increasingly dangerous demonic creatures constantly attacked the advancing army. Yet strangely, troop morale had only improved. The reason was simple. Whenever monsters appeared, Jin usually eliminated them before the soldiers even had time to react. On one battlefield after another, he carved through entire groups of kobolds alone while devouring inner cores immediately afterward in search of new abilities. Even enormous beasts fell apart beneath his sword before the army could properly mobilize. To the soldiers, it was both reassuring and humiliating. Their terrifying mercenary ally had become stronger than the monsters themselves. Roland merely laughed at the situation. If a single mercenary could carry the expedition while minimizing casualties, then there was no reason to complain. In fact, the increasing strength of the enemies only confirmed that they were approaching the center of the demonic domain. Their destination was close. Far away, deep within a canyon hidden inside corrupted territory, several figures stood atop towering stone pillars overlooking the darkness below. These were dark priests. Masked and concealed beneath heavy robes, they calmly discussed the advancing expeditionary force without concern. The appearance of the Order Alliance had arrived slightly earlier than expected, but according to them, everything remained under control. Defenders always held the advantage, and above all else, the great plan of darkness could not be allowed to fail. Meanwhile, the expeditionary force continued pushing deeper into the forest. Then suddenly, the marching army came to a complete stop. Sweat appeared across countless faces as the soldiers stared ahead in stunned silence. Before them stretched an enormous pit descending deep into darkness. Massive spider webs covered the entire crater like a gigantic nest. Thick strands stretched across the canyon walls while movement flickered somewhere far below in the shadows. Even Roland's usual confidence faltered at the sight. For the first time since entering the demonic domain, the commander genuinely looked disturbed. Standing at the edge of the enormous crater, Roland questioned the accompanying priest one final time, unable to hide the unease in his voice. The corrupted energy of the demonic realm was undeniably converging here, but the sight before them felt far beyond anything normal. Even Roland, who had spent years fighting inside corrupted territory, had never heard of a place like this existing. Below the cliff, countless spider-like monsters crawled through layers of gigantic webs while constructing nests throughout the depths of the pit. The entire place felt unnatural. Beside him, Jin quietly observed the terrain with narrowed eyes. Something about the structure bothered him immediately. From a tactical perspective, abandoning the high ground made little sense. Any organized force naturally benefited from elevated positions in combat, yet whoever built this nest had intentionally dug deep underground instead. Roland initially assumed the enemy simply wanted to remain hidden, but Jin quickly dismissed the explanation. If concealment were the goal, tunnels would have been far more effective. The deeper he analyzed the terrain, the clearer the answer became. This was not a hideout. It was a trap. The moment those words left his mouth, chaos erupted behind them. Massive creatures suddenly burst from the forest and crashed directly into the expeditionary force. Soldiers were sent flying as gigantic ape-like monsters tore through the formation with overwhelming strength. Bigfoots, towering several meters tall, the creatures possessed terrifying physical power capable of smashing armored soldiers apart with a single strike. Wrapped around their massive arms were enormous serpent-type monsters with hardened scales and deadly venom. The battlefield collapsed instantly. One Bigfoot slammed both fists into the earth, sending shockwaves through the ground and launching soldiers helplessly into the air. Entire chunks of terrain were ripped upward and hurled into the pit below. Panic screams echoed everywhere as soldiers tumbled into the spider-infested depths. Some became trapped in webs stretched across the crater walls, while others fell directly toward the nests beneath them. Giant spiders immediately descended upon the helpless victims before they could even recover. Roland quickly realized the danger. If the Bigfoots remain alive, the entire army would continue getting pushed into the pit one group at a time. Orders rang across the battlefield as the soldiers attempted to regroup, but before Jin could move, the largest Bigfoot in the group suddenly appeared before him. A monstrous fist slammed directly into his abdomen. The impact launched him completely off the cliff. Roland's expression changed instantly as he watched Jin disappear into the depths below. But while falling, Jin's attention remained fixed on the monster itself. The largest Bigfoot, the strongest one, and wrapped around its arm was a serpent radiating dangerous energy. Even in the middle of freefall, Jin understood immediately. That creature had singled him out deliberately. The two of them crashed into the crater together. Jin managed to stop his descent by driving his sword into the rocky wall, slowing himself just enough to land atop a narrow stone outcropping. But the moment he regained balance, the Bigfoot was already moving again. Using the spider webs like pathways, the massive creature charged through the crater with surprising agility. The battlefield instantly became far more dangerous than Jin initially expected. The Bigfoot possessed overwhelming physical strength in close combat, enough mobility to navigate the vertical terrain freely, and long-range venom attacks through the serpent wrapped around its arm. Every single trait was useful. Every single ability was something hunters would desperately want. To Jin, the monster looked less like an enemy and more like an incredible meal. A grin slowly spread across his face. The serpent lashed forward and sprayed venom through the air, but Jin deflected the attack with his blade before deliberately dropping onto a nearby web. The elastic strands immediately launched him back toward the Bigfoot at incredible speed. As he rushed through the crater walls, he calmly analyzed the creature's greatest weakness. Paired monsters always appeared terrifying because their abilities multiplied each other's strengths. But no matter how coordinated they seemed, controlling two separate bodies as one inevitably created flaws under pressure. Eventually, instinct always overpowered coordination. That moment arrived quickly. As the Bigfoot sensed Jin approaching from behind, it swung both massive arms to crush him instinctively. Instead, the attack smashed directly into the serpent wrapped around its own body. The snake shrieked in agony as blood sprayed through the air. And in that single opening, Jin struck. His sword cleanly severed the Bigfoot's neck. The gigantic corpse crashed down into the depths of the crater while the serpent twitched violently beside it. Landing calmly near the fallen body, Jin admitted the creature had been a respectable gatekeeper. Then his attention shifted toward the serpent. A strange purple aura radiated from the monster core inside its body. The feeling unsettled him immediately. Still, curiosity won over caution. He picked up the core and devoured it. Almost instantly, purple energy erupted across his body. This time, the inheritance succeeded. Jin immediately realized the implications. He could now sense which monster cores contained transferable abilities before consuming them. After devouring countless cores over the years, his body had finally begun developing abnormal reactions to inheritance itself. The discovery alone felt like an enormous reward. Excitement filled him as he prepared to test his newly acquired power. Then suddenly, flames exploded into his back. The impact detonated across the crater wall in a violent blast. Emerging from the shadows nearby, a man wearing a straw hat watched the explosion with amusement, mocking the recklessness of a human wandering carelessly through enemy territory. But instead of panic, Jin simply clicked his tongue in irritation. To the stranger's shock, he slowly stood back up within the flames, almost completely unharmed. Snake-like scales had spread across his skin, protecting his body from the blast. Jin glanced down at himself with visible disappointment. Out of all the possible abilities hidden inside the serpent core, he had hoped for poison. Instead, he inherited only the creature's defensive scales.